Israel is on high alert and fighting back against Palestinians after a string of new attacks. Instead of standing by our closest ally in the Middle East, the Obama administration is accusing Israel of terrorism.
I would say that certainly individuals on both sides of this divide have proven capable of, and in our view, guilty of acts of terror.
State Department spokesman John Kirby stood by that remark today.
I think I would just reiterate what we said before, and we'll continue to stress it, that the violence needs to stop. There's no excuse for the intentional killing of innocent people, for the use of terrorism as a tactic.
And always well coordinated, so did the White House.
The United States mourns any loss of innocent life, whether it's Israeli or it's Palestinian. It is our view that both sides have a responsibility to exercise restraint.
Earlier, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused the Palestinians of spreading lies about the violence and warned the world not to confuse his country's victims with their attackers.
We expect all our friends and anyone concerned with the facts and the truth to look at these facts, to see the truth, and not to draw a false symmetry between Israeli citizens and those who would stab them and knife them to death.
All right, we're going to take it around the table. Eric, I think Netanyahu showed a little bit of restraint there because his people are being attacked. And yes, there has been violence and attacks against Israelis. If an Israeli then defends themselves or defends another Israeli by attacking that attacker, I would say that that is not terrorism. That is self-defense or defending themselves.
And not just these few attacks over the last few days. Over the history of the last 25 years, the Israelis, they're not the attackers. They're the ones that are getting the missiles shot at them, and they go back and they take out the places that the missiles were being shot from. These attacks, now we know, if you watch the videos, Palestinian drives up to the bus stop, takes the bus stop out, hits somebody, hacks away at that person, hacks away at another person. An Israeli comes up and shoots him, and now this guy's being called the terrorist. I don't know why. They're our only close ally in the Middle East. We should be embracing that friendship, that alliance, instead of calling them out. Notice Israelis' response, not only Netanyahu, but Ron Dormer, the deputy Knesset member. They're very hesitant to call out President Obama specifically. Even though things have gotten worse under President Obama, they still say the United States is our friend. We have a great alliance with the United States. It's not their fault. We just need to call attention to what's really going on.
In the last couple of days, Greg, you've been noticing and commenting on the media coverage.
It's amazing. They don't call it terror. They call it tension. And whenever there's any defense, that is called a heavy-handed tactic. So when a man comes at you with a knife and you shoot them, that is a heavy-handed tactic. And then we have to remind everybody, these are coordinated knife attacks by Palestinian young men to foment a war. It reminds me of zombie movies, when like Dawn of the Dead, when all of a sudden out of nowhere, some crazy maniac comes at you and stabs you or kills you. This is actually what Israel is experiencing every day. And what the media does is they equate both sides as creating violence. That's like a man who pushes a woman in front of a bus is the same as the man who rescues her, just because they happen to be there at the same time. It's absolutely disgusting. And I was at the gym watching it on MSNBC, and they must have thought I was crazy because I'm yelling at the TV like, a 75-year-old man, and it leaves you speechless. The media should be ashamed of themselves.
Juan, when the administration doesn't distinguish between the youth attacking the Israelis and then the Israelis responding, if they equate that, doesn't that incite more of the terrorist acts by the Palestinian youth?
Well, I hope not, because I think that you have a situation here where it requires some historical context, which is, of course, that we're talking about Jerusalem and about the Israeli assertion that that's their capital, including East Jerusalem, which is, nobody acknowledges this. And then you have not, Greg, somehow a coordinated effort by, some Palestinian terror group, but individuals. I think everybody agrees these are individual kids acting out.
Coordinated.
I don't know that it's coordinated. I think it's the kids.
Do you think it's just a coincidence that there's all of these knife attacks?
No, what Jana just said is true. Social media, as opposed to a terrorist group, which is what we had in previous intifadas, right? So that's not what's on the table. And then you have the Israelis using the military, not police forces, but the military in response. It's not some guy who says, I saw someone stab somebody on the bus and I responded. It's now the Israeli
No, what Eric was talking about really happened.
Yeah.
I watched the film.
Yeah, we
watched it. A car drove into a bus stop with elderly people, ran them over. He got out, he stabbed them, and thank God, some guy comes out of nowhere with a gun and shoots him.
Right.
And then the guy gets the Palestinian gets up.
Yeah.
Starts grabbing, swinging the knife again.
Look,
a knife this big, Juan.
This is true.
He gets shot a
You're
third and a fourth
telling
time.
the truth, but you're ignoring the part about the Israeli military.
So if the military is stopping coordinated,
How dare they do their job?
No, I'm just saying you
What's
have
wrong with that?
because I think for most of the world they say, wait a second, this is Israeli military, not even police force. In
You don't think, but do you think this is like random acts of violence? I mean,
No,
it's
I
actually,
disagreed with
but
you.
see, but what Greg is describing, Kimberly, is what the definition of terrorism. So trying to attack and kill innocent people to achieve a political aim. That's a definition of a terrorist attack. So why wouldn't the military fight back on the terrorist attack? I don't.
Well, right. They would be remiss if they didn't. They would be shirking their obligations and their duties if they didn't do that. I don't understand why Israel has to sit there and lay down and take it and become, victims of terrorism. They have every right to defend themselves and to stand up against it with whatever force they need to use to shut it down. Because if they see that that's a weak target and people can go in and do this and everybody wants to gang up on Israel, blame the U.S., blame Israel as the bad guys in this, I don't play that game.
I think if it's love of Israel, there's nobody, the United States is the #1 ally of Israel.
But
okay?
you would not
And I
know
don't
from the
think that
rhetoric and the lack of diplomacy
I
towards
think
Israel by this
that's-
administration.
Oh,
That
to
is
the
problem.
contrary, I think the Iran deal, I think everything has been aimed to try and solidify Israel's standing.
You do realize that Bibi Netanyahu is like calling out the president, the administration
that's
for even going.
Netanyahu's failure as a leader, a lack of vision. But I'm saying you've got to understand, and this is what's coming.
You're not suggesting that the Israeli people are in favor of the U.S.-Iran
what he
No, I said
but
Netanyahu.
is tone deaf to them.
I think Netanyahu's done a bad
He's
job of
representing
leadership.
the Israelis
Right.
almost across the
And
board.
his people's
Israelis think that's a bad
interests.
idea.
That's
Let me
what
just
Juan
say,
thinks.
this
Like
is-
we hooked up Israel by getting in bed with, Iran and doing this.
How about
deal.
we said no to Iran getting a nuke, and Iran saying they wanted to remove Israel from the earth.
Dream on in the land
But
of
I'm just saying,
unicorns,
I'm just
Juan.
saying right now, everybody's
it.
talking
Sorry.
about a two-state solution, and that's why I think you hear the administration saying, hey, slow down, everybody slow down. This could cycle out of control, and everybody suddenly finds that we're in trouble.
I agree with that, and I think that's why Netanyahu today actually was trying to be very calm about it. But you do have a problem when the Secretary of State, with declining influence in the Middle East, says, I'm going to go and try to fix it. But he is actually the one who said that it was because of an increasing number of settlements. And actually, it was even a bigger quote than that, like more than ever. Well, Elliot Abrams, who has been in Israeli-U.S. domestic politics for a long time, actually points out it's not true, like less settlements under Netanyahu than previous ones. And so it's dangerous rhetoric like that that's careless, I think, that feeds into it.
Where's the calls for knife control by Piers Morgan and Barack Obama? Where is that?
You know what the interesting thing, though, Juan, is if it is the Israeli military who are thwarting these terror attacks, wow, great. They've declared a war on terror. We can't even say we have terrorists here. I would prefer their tactics over what we're doing, pretending it doesn't exist.
I don't think anybody is denying what's going on. I think that's the difference. Everybody at this table, I think, in the world sees that you have these Palestinian kids. Hang on, let me finish.
Workplace violence when 13 or 14, depending on your view of the pregnant person being killed, that was declared workplace violence.
This would be called road rage
Let me just say,
in the United States.
All right, back to my point. Nobody in the world is denying that you have these Palestinian kids perpetrating acts of violence.
Stop calling them kids.
Or teenagers. What do you want me to call them?
Young adults.
Okay,
with
young
knives.
adults.
Young
all right.
terrorists.
Okay, whatever you want to call them. All right. Let's not play games. So they're perpetrating acts of violence against Israelis. Now, your thinking is, oh, yeah, bring in the military and the biggest armaments, and that'll stop them? Answer, no. It's a lot of social media, and these kids are angry at the fact that the Israelis have come in and taken control
You
of
can hit the
Jerusalem.
problem from other directions, Juan, but you're naive to think that you can't respond and should not respond with force and strong measure to shut it down.
I just
They can
don't
go ahead
think-
and do
I
their
don't think
PR
you stop.
campaigns or social media, but you shouldn't sit there and
I
take
wish
it
to
and get
stop it.
slaughtered like a lamb.
Nobody's asking anybody to get stopped. I just want it to stop, and I don't think that the tremendous, overwhelming show of force is what's going to somehow dissuade this kid that he can achieve martyrdom by a knife attack.
I would send out more.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it is incremental progress when you kill somebody with a knife. It's progress I'm willing to take. If that person has a knife, I would want my people to have a gun.
Can I do one more topic just because we've got 2 minutes?
I've had enough.
Okay.
I'm out of here.
Please. All right, Jim Comey, he is the FBI director. He had a warning about ISIS here in America.
That group is using social media to try and motivate people to either come to their so-called caliphate, or if you can't come, kill where you are. The terrorist is buzzing in the pocket of a troubled soul 24 hours a day through Twitter. We have investigations in all 50 states to try to identify among hundreds of people who are consuming this poison.
So, Kimberly, how does the FBI and other law enforcement coordinate to keep up with that?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, but I do feel confident that he understands the nature and extent of the problem, that it is something that we have to deal with: cyber terrorism, the use of social media, a very active network to recruit young people that are feeling disenfranchised and disenchanted with the way government is, or trying to join up with a cause to try to become one with something. So we have that same problem in the United States with gangs that we see in impoverished neighborhoods or areas, communities that struggle socioeconomically. So you have to be able to find some kind of measure to draw those people in, because they're there for the taking. Whose side are you going to let them play for?
I think all of the presidential candidates, Eric, should have to answer what their counterinsurgency plan is against the digital media war that we're engaged in.
And I would hope they would all say, look, we've said right here over the last 2 years. I think last year Comey made that same statement.
Well, he said there were
60
open
Minutes.
investigations in 50
all 50
states.
states. So he look, they're on it, and that's the good news. And anyone that thinks that they should back off any sort of spending on intel is out of their mind. That you need to press the intel number, give them all the resources they need. I just don't know what the answer is. I don't know that. Clearly ISIS is big and growing and becoming a bigger threat, and more young people who are disillusioned are jumping into the fray for some reason. I have no clue how do you solve that problem?
Well, I think that there's an upcoming article in Foreign Affairs magazine by Jared Cohen from Google Ideas, who's done a lot of this work, and one of the things he says is that ISIS actually has this hierarchy where there's like a small number of people, guys, that work on the social media piece, and then they have fake accounts, but they go into real accounts, and so they're protected. But if there's some way that social media, such as Twitter, can find out to cut that head off, then we would maybe.
Can I just mention one thing here that came as a surprise to me was FBI also said today #1 source of terrorist attacks in the United States is not ISIS, but it's domestic terrorism, and mostly from white supremacist groups.
And they're wrong.
Oh, they're wrong?
Yes.
Why is that, Greg?
The amazing thing about this whole event is everybody blames George Bush for this instability that has created ISIS. They're wrong, because it was actually it was more stable back then. 7 years later, Captain Cumulus, to coin Kimberly's phrase, has screwed Iraq, Libya, Syria, and allowed ISIS to thrive. Under Obama, the Middle East has become the Middle Beast. It's his game, and he's losing it.